I gave my daughter love and sacrifices, but when illness struck, she turned on me, calling me useless. She expected my fortune, yet I left it to someone else. The outcome shattered her world. I left my entire inheritance to a nurse. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to cut his own daughter out of his will. But when someone looks you in the eye and says, "You're just a burden now," it changes everything. I'm 70 years old, and I've worked all my life to provide for my family. I was a school teacher, nothing fancy, but I saved every penny I could. My late wife, God rest her soul, always said, "Family is everything." That became my guiding principle. I wanted my kids to grow up with security, with opportunity. And for years, I thought I'd done a decent job. But after my wife passed, the cracks began to show. My eldest daughter, Laura, took control of everything. She was always bossy, even as a child, but now it was like she believed she owned me. She managed my medications, my bank account, even who could visit me. At first, I thought she was helping. I was grateful. But little by little, it became clear this wasn't love, it was control. I remember the night it all started to shift. I had just gotten back from a doctor's appointment. My legs ached constantly, and I moved slowly. I asked Laura if she could help me prepare dinner. She sighed loudly and muttered, "You always need something. I didn't sign up to be your servant." That cut deep. Still, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she had a bad day. But then I started noticing things. Money missing from my account. Jewelry my wife had left me suddenly lost. When I asked about it, Laura's face hardened. "Don't start with your paranoia, Dad," she snapped. But it didn't feel like paranoia. The breaking point came one Sunday afternoon. My younger daughter, Emily, came to visit. She lives across the country, but she always calls, always checks in. She brought me a homemade pie, my favorite. When she set it on the table, Laura rolled her eyes and said, "Great, another sugar bomb to mess with his blood pressure." Emily just smiled, tried to keep the peace. But then Laura turned to her and said, "You have no idea what it's like. You fly in twice a year and play the good daughter. I'm the one who's stuck with him." The word, stuck, made me feel like trash in my own home. I spoke up. "Laura, I'm your father. Not a burden. Not some chore." She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Well, sometimes you sure feel like one." Emily gasped. My hands were shaking. I felt humiliated, small, like I didn't even matter. That was the moment something inside me broke. I didn't say much after that. I just excused myself and went to my room. But I made a decision. I pulled out the old metal box from under my bed, the one with my will, my savings documents, and the deed to the house. That night, I started rewriting everything. I thought about all the years I sacrificed, working late, saving instead of spending, putting my kids through college, paying for their weddings. I thought about how my wife's last wish was for us to stay close. And I realized my loyalty had been misplaced. If Laura saw me as a burden, then she didn't deserve the fruits of my labor. So I made a choice that would shock everyone. I left almost everything. Not to Laura, not to the daughter who lived closest and had the most access to me, but to Emily, the one who never treated me like a chore. And yes, I left a special sum for someone else too, someone who had shown me more kindness in a few months than Laura had in years. But that part of the story, well, it's coming. For now, let me say this. The moment I signed those papers, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with a courtroom or a big fight. Sometimes it comes quietly with a pen and paper. And when the truth finally came out, let's just say Laura learned the hardest lesson of her life. When I changed my will that night, I didn't just think about my daughters. I thought about dignity, about kindness, about who had actually been there for me when I felt weakest. And the truth is, that person wasn't family at all. Her name is Sandra. She's my home nurse. She only started coming by twice a week after my last hospital stay, but from day one she treated me like a human being, not a job, not an inconvenience, not a paycheck. She'd sit with me after checking my vitals, talk about her own life, laugh at my old stories. Once, when I had trouble walking to the kitchen, she didn't just help me. She cooked a warm meal, plated it nicely, and sat across from me, so I wouldn't eat alone. That might sound small, but after months of Laura's sighs and rolled eyes, it felt like a miracle. So when I rewrote my will, I included Sandra. Not everything, of course. Most went to Emily, who had always respected me. But I set aside a substantial sum for Sandra, enough for her to finally buy a house she'd been dreaming about. I knew Laura would be furious if she ever found out. But in my heart, I felt my wife smiling down at me. Because fairness isn't about blood, it's about love. Now, I wish I could say the secret stayed hidden until the end. But nothing stays buried in families like mine. It all blew up 3 months later. It started with a doctor's appointment. Emily had flown in for a weekend visit and came with me. She held my arm as we walked, patient as always. Afterward, we stopped for coffee, and I told her about the will. I wanted her to know ahead of time, so there'd be no shock later. She listened quietly, then nodded. "Dad, it's your money, your choice. Honestly, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." I felt relief wash over me, but fate had other plans. When we got home, Laura was already there, pacing in the living room. She must have arrived while we were out. Emily had left the folder with the updated will sticking out of her bag. Laura spotted it the moment we walked in. "What's this?" she asked, pulling it out before Emily could react. My stomach dropped. "Laura, put that back," I said firmly. But she had already opened it. I saw her eyes darting across the pages, her face turning red. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted. "You're leaving me nothing? Nothing? After everything I've done for you?" I stood up, my legs trembling, but my voice steady. "You don't get to call belittling me and stealing from me, doing everything." Her jaw clenched. "This is insane. You're giving my share to Emily? And some nurse? A stranger? Dad, do you even hear yourself?" Emily stepped forward. "Laura, calm down. He made his decision. You can't bully him into changing it. That only fueled the fire." Laura spun on her sister. "Oh, of course you defend him. You're barely around, but somehow you're the saint. Meanwhile, I'm here every day cleaning up his mess." My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. "You don't see me as your father anymore. You see me as an obligation. That's why you lost the right to inherit what I built." For a moment, there was silence. Then Laura laughed bitterly. "You know what? Fine. Rot in this house with your little nurse friend. Don't expect me to lift a finger when you fall." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I wish that was the end of it. But the real storm came a week later. Laura had always been clever. Too clever. Without telling me, she went to the local courthouse to contest my will, even before I passed away. She claimed I was mentally unfit and that Emily and Sandra had manipulated me. When I received the papers in the mail, I felt sick. To have my own daughter declare me incompetent, it was worse than a knife to the chest. I called Emily right away. She flew back again, and together we met with my lawyer. The man had known me for years, handled our family business since my wife was alive. He shook his head and said, "She doesn't have a case, but she can drag you through hell trying." And she did. Suddenly, neighbors were whispering. Laura was spreading stories that Emily was greedy, that Sandra was a scam artist preying on an old man. She even accused Sandra of stealing medication. Sandra cried when she told me, "Mr. Williams, I swear I'd never do anything like that." I put my hand over hers. "I know, Sandra. Don't you worry. The truth will speak louder than her lies." But inside, I was furious. Furious and heartbroken. The day of the hearing, Laura walked in with her lawyer, wearing a smug smile. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. Emily sat beside me, holding my hand, while Sandra waited quietly in the back row. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly, leaning on my cane. My voice shook, but I made sure every word was clear. I may be old, but I am not senile. My mind is sharp. I chose to change my will because I realized something painful, that love and respect cannot be bought, and blood alone does not guarantee either. My daughter Laura has treated me as a burden, not as family. Meanwhile, my younger daughter Emily has treated me with love, and Sandra, who owes me nothing, has treated me with dignity. That is why I made my decision. Not because anyone forced me, because it was right. The room was silent. Laura's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. Finally, after reviewing the documents and my testimony, the judge dismissed Laura's petition. She lost. I thought maybe that would be the end, that she'd swallow her pride and walk away. But the look she gave me as she left the courtroom, it was pure venom. That's when I realized the battle wasn't over. No, the real reckoning was yet to come. Because if Laura couldn't win in court, she'd try to win another way. And the next chapter of this story, well, that's when things truly spiraled out of control. After Laura lost in court, I prayed that maybe, just maybe, she'd come to her senses. That she'd reflect, swallow her pride, and try to make peace. But I was a fool for hoping. Instead of backing down, Laura got meaner. The venom I saw in her eyes that day didn't fade. It grew. It started with phone calls. At first, she'd call late at night, just breathing into the receiver before hanging up. Then, she began leaving angry voicemails. You think Emily actually cares about you? She just wants your money. Or, that nurse is laughing behind your back. She's going to take everything. I deleted them, but each one left a knot in my stomach. Emily begged me to block her number. Dad, she's toxic. You don't know her access to you anymore. But she was still my daughter. And no matter how much she hurt me, part of me couldn't cut that final tie. Things escalated the night. I found my mailbox ripped open, letters scattered across the yard. Bills, bank statements, even the church newsletter, all soaked in rain. At first, I thought it was kids messing around. But then I saw Laura's car parked down the street, headlights off. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. Until Sandra arrived for her shift the next morning and found the words thief spray-painted across the side of her car. She broke down, crying right there in the driveway. Mr. Williams, I can't keep doing this. She's ruining my life. I felt my chest ache. Sandra, I'll protect you. You've done nothing wrong. This is on me. But I knew it wasn't just me anymore. Laura's hatred was spilling over, hurting innocent people. The final straw came one Sunday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, when I heard pounding on the door. Before I could stand, Laura barged in, face twisted with rage. You think you can cut me out of your life? Out of Mom's house? She screamed. I stood as tall as my frail legs would let me. This is my home, Laura. You don't belong here anymore. She marched right up to me, eyes wild. I took care of you for years. You owe me. And if you won't give me what I deserve, I'll take it myself. Emily, who happened to be visiting, stepped between us. Enough, Laura. You can't just storm in here like this. Laura, shove her back. Hard. The sight of my two daughters, one protecting me, the other attacking, made something inside me snap. Get out. I roared, my voice shaking the walls. Get out before I call the police. She froze, stunned that I'd raised my voice. But instead of leaving quietly, she spat at my feet and hissed, You'll regret this. Then she slammed the door and was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words kept replaying in my mind. You'll regret this. 2 days later, the regret came. I woke up to smoke. Thick, choking smoke curling under my bedroom door. Panic shot through me. I stumbled out of bed, coughing, calling for help. Sandra, who was staying over that night because of my health, burst into the room. Fire. We need to get out. Together, she half-carried me down the hallway. Flames licked the curtains in the living room. The smell of gasoline was unmistakable. It wasn't an accident. We barely made it outside before the front windows shattered from the heat. The house, the home my wife and I built together, the place where we raised our girls, was engulfed in flames. As I stood on the lawn, shivering in my night clothes, watching my life burn to ash, a cold realization settled over me. Laura had done this. The fire department arrived quickly, but it was too late. By morning, the house was gone, a charred skeleton. The investigators confirmed what I already knew. The fire had been set intentionally. An accelerant poured along the windowsill, matches scattered near the back porch. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to believe Laura would never go that far. But when the police questioned her, she couldn't even hide the bitterness in her tone. Maybe if he treated me like family, he wouldn't be in this mess, she muttered. That was enough. The police didn't have hard proof yet, but I did. I handed over the threatening voicemails, the spray-painted car photos, even the memory of her storming into my house days before the fire. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. Through all of this, Emily never left my side. She put me up in her guest room, made sure I had clothes, meals, medicine. And Sandra, despite her car being vandalized, despite the gossip, still came, still cared. One night, as we sat around Emily's kitchen table, I broke down. "I don't understand," I whispered. "How can a child I raised with love turn so cruel? What did I go wrong?" Emily squeezed my hand. "Dad, you didn't go wrong. She made her choices. This isn't about you failing, it's about her greed." Sandra nodded. "Sometimes family isn't who shares your blood. It's who stands beside you when everything falls apart." Their words hit me like a wave of truth. The real climax came a month later, when the police returned with an arrest warrant. They had found surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera, Laura's car, parked near my house the night of the fire. A gas can was visible in the trunk. She was taken in handcuffs, screaming that I had ruined her life. "You were supposed to take care of me, not the other way around," she wailed. I watched from Emily's porch as the police car drove away. My heart was heavy, but there was also a strange lightness, like a weight had lifted. Justice had finally arrived. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding, not just my life, but my spirit. The insurance money covered some of the loss, but the real treasure was realizing who truly loved me. Emily and I grew closer than ever. Sandra, despite everything, stayed in my life. She became more than just a nurse. She became family. And Laura? She faced the consequences of her choices in a courtroom once again. Only this time, there was no escaping the truth. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: inheritance isn't about money. It's about legacy. And my legacy will never be the daughter who tried to destroy me. It will be the love that survived her cruelty, the love of the daughter who stood by me, and the kindness of a stranger who became family. Because in the end, blood doesn't define family. Actions do. And Laura's actions sealed her fate. The day of Laura's trial was the hardest day of my life. Harder than the night I lost my wife. Harder than the fire that burned down my home. Because nothing prepares you for sitting in a courtroom, looking across at your own flesh and blood, knowing she tried to destroy you. I wore the same suit I had worn to my wife's funeral. Emily sat beside me, her hand never leaving mine. Sandra was there too, in the second row, her presence like a shield. When they brought Laura in, handcuffed, she looked different. Not the daughter I remembered, not the little girl who used to run into my arms after school. Her eyes were cold, her mouth twisted in defiance. She didn't look at me. She didn't even look ashamed. The charges were serious: arson, destruction of property, reckless endangerment. The prosecutor argued that she had endangered not only me, but also Sandra, who had been in the house that night. When the prosecutor said that out loud, endangering his caregiver, who was asleep in the home at the time of the fire, Laura smirked. Smirked, as if the whole thing were a joke. That smirk broke something in me. The trial stretched on for days. The defense tried to paint Laura as a desperate daughter who just snapped under the burden of caregiving. They said I had been ungrateful, that I'd favored Emily unfairly, that I was being manipulated by Sandra. It was painful to listen to. They twisted the story, making me out to be some senile old man who didn't know what he wanted. But then the evidence came. First, the security footage from my neighbor's camera. There was clear as daylight. Laura's car pulling up near my house the night of the fire. You could see her carrying a red gas can, looking around nervously before walking toward the porch. Next came the gas station receipt, paid in cash, but with a timestamp that matched the video. And finally, the voicemails. When the jury heard her voice snarling, "You'll regret this," and "Don't expect me to lift a finger when you fall," the room went silent. The truth wasn't just spoken, it echoed. Then came the hardest part. My testimony. I stood at the witness stand, cane in hand, and told the truth. My voice shook, but I spoke from the heart. I raised Laura with love. I worked hard my whole life to give my daughter's security opportunity. When my wife died, I thought we would grow closer. Instead, Laura treated me like a burden. She took my money, my belongings, my dignity. And when I finally stood up for myself, she tried to take my life. This trial isn't about an old man's will. It's about respect. It's about a daughter who forgot what family means. And I pray to God that one day she remembers. But today, she must face what she's done. I sat down, tears in my eyes. Emily gripped my hand so tight, I thought she might never let go. The The defense tried to shake me. Mr. Williams, the lawyer sneered, isn't it true that you changed your will under the influence of this nurse, Sandra? Isn't it possible that you were confused? Sandra gasped softly in the back. I straightened up as much as I could. I'm not confused. I may be old, but I know exactly what I did. Sandra didn't manipulate me. She showed me kindness when my own daughter did not. That's why she's in my will. Because she earned it. Not with blood, but with love. The lawyer stammered, caught off guard by the firmness in my voice. But the most shocking moment came from a witness no one expected, Laura's own ex-husband. When he walked into the courtroom, Laura's face went pale. He testified under oath that during their marriage, Laura had a pattern of manipulation and cruelty. He told the jury about the time she drained their joint bank account, leaving him stranded. About the time she lied to her own children to turn them against him. And then he said the words that sealed her fate. She always told me she'd find a way to get her father's money. She said, when he's gone, everything will finally be mine. The jury shifted in their seats. The judge's expression darkened. Laura looked like she might explode. She stood up suddenly, shouting, he's lying. You're all against me. This is my family, my inheritance. It should have been mine. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. Ms. Williams, sit down. But it was too late. Her outburst had revealed the truth more clearly than any piece of evidence could. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for only 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. My chest tightened. My eyes filled with tears I couldn't stop. Emily squeezed my hand, whispering, it's over, Dad. It's finally over. But as they led Laura away in handcuffs, she turned one last time and shouted, you'll regret this, old man. You'll die alone, and she'll take everything. She jerked her head towards Sandra. The courtroom gasped, but I didn't, because in that moment, I realized something with perfect clarity. I would never regret choosing love over blood. Never. In the days that followed, people in town stopped me on the street. Some said, I can't believe your own daughter did that. Others said, you did the right thing. Don't ever doubt it. And slowly, the shame I carried began to lift. Sandra helped me find a small apartment while insurance processed the fire claim. Emily made sure I had everything I needed. Friends from church brought meals, sat with me, prayed with me. For the first time in years, I felt surrounded not by obligation, but by genuine care. And though my heart ached for the daughter I lost to greed, I also felt peace. Because justice had been done. The moral of that chapter in my life was simple. Family isn't just who you're born with. It's who shows up when the smoke fills your lungs and the walls crumble around you. And Laura, well, she learned that lesson the hard way. Because in the end, all her scheming, all her cruelty bought her nothing but chains, while the love she tried to destroy only grew stronger. When the trial ended and the verdict was read, I thought that would be the last chapter of my story with Laura. But life doesn't close its books so quickly. Even in victory, there are consequences, wounds that don't heal overnight. The weeks after the sentencing felt like walking through a fog. My body was exhausted, but it was my heart that carried the heaviest weight. I kept thinking about Laura as a little girl holding my hand on the way to school or sneaking into our bed during thunderstorms because she was afraid. How did that innocent child grow into the woman who tried to burn her own father alive? The answer never came, and maybe it never will. Some questions in life don't have answers. What I didn't know, though, was that I couldn't let her cruelty be the final mark on my family's name. My wife always believed in healing, in moving forward, in choosing love. So that's what I tried to do. The inheritance paperwork went through faster than I expected. My lawyer called me one morning and said, Mr. Williams, everything's finalized. Your will is secured. Your wishes are protected now. I breathed a long, shaky sigh of relief. Emily came with me to sign the final documents. When she realized what I had left her, she cried. Dad, it's too much, she whispered. I don't need all this money. I just need you. I smiled at her. I know, and that's why you deserve it. You never wanted my money, Emily. You only wanted my love. And that's the kind of daughter who should carry my legacy. She hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs might crack. But I had one more surprise to reveal. When Sandra came by later that week, I asked her to sit down. She looked nervous, like she thought I was about to fire her. I pulled out the papers. Sandra, I know you didn't help me for money, but you gave me kindness when I had nothing left. That's why I left you a gift. She opened the envelope and her eyes widened. Mr. Williams, this is enough to buy a house. I chuckled softly. Good. Then buy one. Make it a home. Fill it with the family you deserve. Tears streamed down her face. She grabbed my hands. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll keep visiting me when you move in, I said with a grin. She laughed through her tears. Always. Word of the inheritance spread quickly in town. Some people whispered, some judged, but most understood. The story of what Laura had done, of how Emily and Sandra stood by me, had become something of a local tale. At church, folks came up to me, patting my shoulder, saying things like, "You showed real strength," or "That was justice, plain and simple." For once, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt proud, not because I had money, not because I had one in court, but because I had chosen to honor love over blood. Life slowly began to rebuild itself. Emily and I spent more time together than ever before. We went through old photo albums, sharing memories of her mother, laughing and crying at the same time. She started bringing her kids around more often, and hearing their laughter in the house filled me with joy I thought I'd lost forever. Sandra, true to her word, didn't disappear either. She bought a small cottage just outside town, painted it yellow, and planted roses in the front yard. She invited me and Emily to dinner every other Sunday. It felt strange at first, being cared for by someone who wasn't blood, but over time, it felt right. She wasn't just my nurse anymore. She had become family. As for Laura, she was sentenced to several years in prison. The newspapers wrote about her trial, about the daughter who tried to burn her father's house down for money. She became a cautionary tale, a whisper parents used when warning their kids about greed. And in a way, that was her final inheritance, her name etched in shame, while Emily and Sandra carried forward the love she tried to destroy. I visited her once in prison. Just once. She sat across from me, in an orange jumpsuit, eyes cold. "You came to gloat?" she spat. I shook my head. "No, I came to say goodbye." She scoffed. "Goodbye? You're not dying." I leaned on my cane and looked her in the eye. Goodbye to the daughter I thought I had. Because she's gone. And until you find her again, if you ever do, I don't have a place for you in my life. Her face went pale. For the first time in years, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Regret? Fear? I don't know. But I walked out without looking back. That was the last time I ever saw her. Now, when I sit by the window in the evenings, I don't think about the fire or the trial or the screaming matches. I think about Emily's laughter. I think about Sandra's roses. I think about my wife and how proud she would be that love, not bitterness, had the final word in our family. Because in the end, justice wasn't just Laura going to prison. Justice was me choosing who truly deserved my legacy. Justice was Sandra finally owning a home. Justice was Emily knowing, without a shadow of doubt, that she was the daughter who carried my heart. And the moral of my story? Don't ever let guilt tie you to people who treat you like a burden. Family isn't about blood. It's about love, respect, and kindness. My daughter turned her back on me when I needed her most. So I turned my back on her greed. And instead, I gave my inheritance to the ones who stood by me, my loving Emily, and the nurse who became family. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is leaving your legacy in the hands of those who truly deserve it.